Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 Round Table. Once again, Josh Neighbors, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Next to me is Steven Simcox. He is the host of Locked On Horned Frogs. Below him, it is John Williams, the host of Locked On Sooners. And to his left, below me, it is Jake Hatch of Locked On Cougars. TCU, Oklahoma, and BYU all represented here on the show. So big news that we're talking about today, and it's kind of been happening over the last 24 hours or so, is that the Big Ten is closing in on their television deal with three partners, CBS, NBC, and the primary being Fox. And all of the implications surrounding that. Take number one, or kind of part number one of this, 60% primary rights going to Fox. CBS will fill their 3:30 game with a game from the Big Ten, and also it sounds like a primetime game will be happening on NBC, most likely following a Notre Dame game. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I don't think we see many night Notre Dame games on NBC. They usually do 3:30 window as it is there. So really what the Big Ten is wanting to do, it sounds like, is create, guess what, an NFL-like schedule where all of their TV windows are covered. Steven, your initial thoughts when you saw the Big Ten closing in on this deal, and there not being obviously the mothership four-letter network, ESPN.
Yeah, I think it was Brian Curtis that said this, but what are we going to do now without Michigan versus whoever at 11 a.m.? Like, that seemed like such a commodity, such a consistent thing. Yeah, on Saturdays, college game day ends. It's always at like 11:02 because Corso's got to get a little build-up going with the headgear. And then it's like, oh, hey, Michigan's playing Nebraska on today. That's kind of cool. All right, let me just settle in and get going. I find it interesting just because people have said this, but it's crazy now that it's actually real. I mean, this is a Fox and ESPN war, and they have picked their sides. Like, ESPN has staked their flag with the SEC. Fox has staked their flag with the Big Ten. As you mentioned, there's going to be some streaming, some NBC, CBS involved there as well. But these two huge networks have said, okay, these are our leagues, and we're rolling with them. So that's just going to be fun to watch and entertaining to kind of see, who has the upper hand there. Obviously, the SEC is such a huge brand when it comes to college football. As far as it relates to the Big 12, I think it's good. There's a there's a good real estate there with ESPN now. Obviously, you have to fill that programming. They're not just going to do it with SEC teams. This still just seems like kind of a staring match between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, and who's going to kind of edge out and be, next in line behind the Big Two. And I don't have a great answer for that. I think the Big 12 is in a good position, but it does feel like the longer this drags on, you sort of wonder if there's any stabilization with what's going on the West Coast. But I think overall it's good. I mean, the Big 12 is united. They're in a position of strength, and now there's more real estate on ESPN. I know people don't love 11 a.m. kickoffs, but that would make a lot of sense for Central Time Zone to have some teams just kind of starting off the day in Big 12 country, and that's now kind of opened up a little bit more with the Big 10 moving on to Fox.
And it's interesting because, John, it looks like the gap, there's going to be a gap between the SEC and the Big Ten, it looks like, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the current deal is $300 million per year for, that's absurd. $300 million per year from ESPN for the SEC. I mean, this deal we're talking about right here, in the kind of its different variation, might be worth close towards $1 billion, right? A billion. And so you're talking about distribution. I mean, the Big Ten, John, they're staking their claim here, and they're doing it with a variety of partners.
And I think that's kind of the way forward for any of these conferences, really, is to have we talked about this like a month ago, I feel like, where having, yes, a primary rights holder, but then making sure that you have your product on several networks just to promote your product, but then to pull from bigger resources, bigger pools. We gave the analogy, like if you're waiting tables and the 20 top is all split in checks, you're going to have a better chance of getting bigger tips as opposed to if they're all just giving you one lump sum. And I think it's going to be fine for the SEC. They're going to make their money. They've got the best product in college football. I think the Big 12 is going to do just fine as well. They've got college football. I mean, it's the product that everybody wants. And so, will they approach, 1 billion? Will the SEC? I bet the SEC is seeing this and they're just licking their chops. Like, all right, if this is what it's going to be. Greg Sankey is ready to go to the table. ESPN, you ready to do some business? Let's go. I think they're going to be just fine. And I mean, the money's going to continue to flow. It's just like quarterback contracts in the NFL. Every time a new one comes up, another one just blows it away. And that's going to be the same thing with these TV rights deals. It's going to make what we think of as money in college football, it's going to make us blush. Like every single time that a new media rights deal comes to fruition, we're just going to be like speechless over it. And that's kind of how I'm at with the Big Ten. I had to look at it several times when I saw that it said 1 billion per year. I'm like, what? Really? But that's where the money's going to be, and that's where college football is headed.
Jake, we talk about the money. I mean, it kind of makes you think, like, to what end? What can we do with all of this money? Like, what does it mean to have all this money?
Put new slides and new facilities that I don't know.
Laser tag.
Sure. Like you're going to have to, here's the thing with regards to what the Big Ten's trying to do right now is they're trying to set the market and they're trying to get as much money as they can. And you're right, John. Now the SEC is sitting there saying, okay, yeah, you guys set the mark. We're gonna blow by that. The biggest thing is I think for like the Big 12, the Pac-12 now, is they are going to be playing behind these two, is how much can you scoop up from ESPN? If they're going to truly be cut out of this Big 10 deal, that should in theory leave more money on the table for both the Pac-12 and the Big 12 in their upcoming media rights negotiations. So I feel like the Big 12 should be feeling pretty good about themselves, all things considered, because we all, I think, expected that ESPN would be in the mix for the Big 12's media rights. And them not having to pay any money to the Big Ten, according to those reports, means that there is more money in ESPN's back pocket that they should be able to spend.
Yeah, this now kind of gets to the Big 12 side of things. The Pac-12 is at a little bit of an advantage here because they're first. They are first up, so this is a little bit of an advantage for them. But guys, we got to talk about ESPN. I mean, for the Pac-12 and for the Big 12, ESPN seems like the only dance partner left that's a big cable company, or big cable TV, I should say. It's mainstream, I should say, that could be the primary rights holder for either. I mean, I know ESPN already does have the ACC, but in addition to the SEC is what I mean. And the Big Ten only does, the Fox only does have the Big Ten. But Steven, do you think that, I mean, it's kind of ESPN or bust here for the Big 12 and the Pac-12 considering this move? Or do you think the Fox will want to add more?
Sorry, I'll mute myself. That would help.
Okay,
no, I think Fox will be involved. I feel like also, we've talked about this in previous weeks, there's a ton of non-linear cable options as well that could be possibly involved in the situation. But I mean, I agree with Jake. Ultimately, it seems like if ESPN is your kind of main partner, you would look there first. But you would hope that Brett Yormark is creative in shopping around and finding ways to put the league in some different situations, because that's one sort of interesting component about not being one of the, I guess, brand names, if you want to call it that, is that you're not really hitched to one network in a way. You have the ability to kind of look around and see if the grass is greener somewhere else. So there's options on the table here. It feels like ESPN would be your first conversation.
Yeah, let me add one thing on that. It feels like to me that the Pac-12 they're more in need of ESPN as an entity than the Big 12 is, in my opinion, because I think there is going to be interest on the part of, I think, CBS, Fox, and even NBC. We've heard about that, the shoulder programming potentially that NBC is looking for with regards to Notre Dame broadcast. I think the Big 12, just with the diversity of the different TV windows that they can offer, that's going to give the Big 12 more options. It feels like ESPN and the Pac-12 are two that need to work together more so than the Big 12 needing just ESPN.
And John, I'll tell you about the time windows. Think about it like that. I mean, to Jake's point, like the late night stuff doesn't really change here. Now, the one wrinkle that could be thrown into this is the Big Ten's desire to add that. Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic talked about that today. Hey, do they want to get into a fourth window, the night games? Could they add Oregon? Could they add Stanford and Washington and Cal to do so? That's something that we talked about also with Big 12 After Dark. That become a possibility. But to Jake's point, John, that noon window is opened. It's been opened up now, right, on ESPN, because there was a lot of Big Ten stuff that happened then. 3:30's opened up just a little bit too. If CBS wants to keep making a move here, the noon window is open for them. NBC, the noon window. I mean, basically for NBC, you're one game away now from filling out a full schedule, right? From hitting those 3 time slots. If you got Notre Dame, a night game, you're a nooner now away from having a full slate on a Saturday. And maybe the Fox, I mean, we've only heard about one game on Fox, right? I don't think we've heard about, now obviously FS1 will get programming and BTN will get programming, but so far it sounds like they've only announced the one game for Fox, so which would probably be a noon game. So there's places to go. I mean, John, I guess that's the upshot here, right? Avenues in the Big 12's time window have now opened up just a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think this is what's going to make it viable for the Big 12 to continue to find good money and good success. Like, just because the Pac-12's first doesn't mean that the Big 12 won't get their money when their time to renegotiate their media rights deal comes up. These networks want college football, and they want it from as many sources as they can. And so they're not going to shut out the Big 12 completely just because they decided, that Fox decided that they wanted the Big 10, or the ESPN decides that they want the SEC. Will they potentially play second fiddle to those 2 conferences? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that they can't make money and can't find programming and can't find good windows for their schools to be on those networks. They're going to have a place to put their product. That's not going to be an issue. And as we've seen with Brett Yormark, I mean, he's going to be an aggressive player in this field. He's not going to sit back on his hands and wait for things to happen. He's going to go out there and make things happen. I mean, if you're following the Big 12 social media account at all on Twitter, I highly recommend it if you're not, but they've really upped their game in recent weeks to kind of take on that same mentality. They're getting aggressive themselves. So I don't have any concern about the Big 12 finding a window that's going to fully advertise their product and their platform and make money, because Brett Yormark is going to find a way to make that happen. And the networks are going to want it because they know that the Big 12, the fan bases that are in the Big 12, they're going to be locked in and tuned in every single week. And even the ones that aren't fans of Big 12 teams, I mean, you're talking about Texas, you're talking about Oklahoma, you're talking about these states that are locked into college football. It doesn't matter that it's not a Big 12 team that's playing. They're going to watch it. Or it's not that their team is playing. They're going to watch because it's college football. And so you're going to want those Midwestern, the South states on your network because they're going to bring TV viewers every single weekend.
Quick word from our sponsors here on the show. Today's Locked On Big 12 podcast, or other podcast you guys are listening to, is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net for you all to go place a wager on the team that win the Big 12 this year. Just go to BetOnline and BetOnline.net. They've got odds for every single conference that you all could want, odds for Heisman Trophy. They've got odds for not just college football. They've got baseball, basketball, football, futures, props, anything you want. They've got BetOnline, BetOnline.net. It's where the game starts. All right, guys. So the kind of interesting part about this too is there is now an opening as well in basketball. I think there is one thing, I know football drives this entire thing, but think about it like this. Big Ten basketball was usually what opened up a lot of their evenings. So that is there now too. And I mean, ESPN's got to have some interest because you're getting some heavy hitters, right? I mean, you're getting the Big 12 offers 3 of the last 6 teams that made up the national championship game. They offer 2 of the last 3 national champions. And it does not appear that Baylor or Kansas are going anywhere in those respects. And obviously more are incoming. Texas OU, obviously good, really good programs. But I think the Big 12 was kind of set up basketball-wise to absorb that kind of loss. So that's there as well. I want to bring up something interesting, though. We like to go in different directions here. A listener hit me up on Twitter and said, why is nobody talking about Turner being a bidder for CFB rights? I believe the Big 12 has an opportunity for TNT/TBS to do a pregame show, then counter program all Saturday and all time windows. So I actually thought this was interesting. I said only as long as we get inside the NBA as the pregame show. It's the only way that we're doing that. But number one reason why we have not heard this is because it's not being reported because nobody's actually on that story. But I will say, like, the idea now, we have to extend this because I thought about this with NBC, right? The idea of college football on USA Network. Hey, where are the Premier League games now? Well, there's no longer an NBCSN. They are going to a place like USA. The Premier League games are. Let's see if football could follow. Steven, would you have as much of a problem with Big 12 football on TNT, TBS, USA Network, places like that? Are you opposed to it? Or what are your thoughts on maybe a little bit outside the box, still kind of being inside the major cable family though?
Yeah, I mean, I have some fond memories of watching the Big 12 on CBS. I remember Vince Young. I think that was the Oklahoma State game, running around, making that comeback. Seneca Wallace at Iowa State.
Wait, was this actually on TV? Were they actually on TBS at one point?
Big 12's on TBS at one point.
Wow, look at that. There you go. This wouldn't actually, it makes sense. I mean, Turner, obviously, I know they had college before. I just didn't realize it was exactly on TBS. Yeah.
It wasn't for very long, but they were there. I think the risk you run with that, I like the outside the box thinking. I feel like the risk you run is you're losing Texas and OU. And you don't necessarily have, like, I think you have some really good teams, really competitive teams. If you don't have a kind of a brand name to build around, I mean, you're built like people have cable. I get it. But you're trying to get people to flip from ESPN, flip from Fox, flip from Peacock. Like you're trying to build your own sort of community within another network. And so that's tough to do. Now, having a really solid pregame show, that's a good way to go about doing that. Counter programming, I think is smart, but I'm not sure the Big 12 is set up to go to a completely different place and draw viewers away from ESPN and Fox. I feel like a better route would be to kind of be interspersed,
Yeah, well, it would not be a primary. I don't think they'd be a primary rights holder. But I'm just saying, like, could you imagine a little 10 o'clock, a 9:30 kickoff for a Big 12 game on TNT, right?
I like it, man. Somebody tuning in to watch like a rerun of The Closer. Instead, they get like BYU Baylor,
Texas Tech.
Yeah,
like why is the Equalizer not on TNT right now? It's, well, you got football. That's what you got instead.
So somebody just microwaved some garlic knots and sat down to watch The Big Bang Theory, and instead they're getting Big 12 football.
Right? Where is my Impractical Jokers? It's not on here. Sorry, you've got
That's true TV, man.
That's true TV. Yeah, true TV. Exactly right. But this is where we're going. And so John, I mean, obviously OU's going to be in a lot of very marquee. I mean, I think that the way that the Big 12 kind of equals the playing field is going different places. The one big player that we have to mention here is Amazon. Amazon gets left out. Now, they have a Thursday property, right? But I think the goal for Amazon I've said this before, is to make it to Sundays, right? Because that Thursday night game, it's its own thing. We'll watch. But like, I mean, I don't love Thursday night NFL football. Like, we all know how physical the NFL is. And it's not great. Like, I think about a week of practice when we have a team that plays on Sunday and a Thursday. Like, that is a garbage week of practice. Especially because they normally have off days. I mean, I know some teams were like light stretch recovery Monday. Guys are off Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're hitting the hard practice. Saturday, there's, walkthrough, obviously, where, travel, whatever it is. Like, and so the Thursday night product, I don't think we're all in love with it as it is. Obviously, get some big games, some big matchups occasionally, but there's a whole lot of Jags Titans on there, right? A whole lot of Browns Dolphins on there. And I think Amazon obviously made a push to get in with the Big Ten side. At this point, it looks like they're going to be shut out. And so, John, I would say they're the biggest non-ESPN player out there that could make a play for the primary rights. I actually believe that because Amazon's got so much money. I mean, there's no question about the amount of money they have to spend. So I know it's a hot take to say they are, but what do you think about that, John? About them being maybe the biggest threat to be a primary rights holder? Because I don't think Fox, CBS, or NBC would be a primary.
I mean, they've got the cash to go toe-to-toe with anybody. I mean, if they wanted to get all of the Big 12 on Amazon Prime streaming, they could do it. I mean, ESPN, Fox, they can't compete with what Amazon's going to be able to throw out at anybody. And so I think probably what happens is kind of almost similar to the Thursday night game, but you get like a Saturday game of the week on Amazon Prime as opposed to like a full slate of Big 12 games. Or, and I'd be okay with that, but I'm also, I'm an Amazon Prime's, subscriber, so that's not a big deal for me. I'll be able to find my Oklahoma football games wherever. I don't necessarily like the idea of it being kind of the primary place to find the Big 12 game of the week. I think that makes it more challenging in some respects for some of the viewership. But if the money's right, that doesn't matter near as much to the Big 12. If they're going to get paid handsomely to have that game over there, they'll be okay with the ratings being a little bit lower, as long as they're going to get the money that they need to be able to distribute it to their schools to keep the conference viable long term. I like the idea of kind of being diversive with your properties, having a game on TBS or TNT sometimes, having a game on USA or Amazon, just being able to put your product out there as much as possible for as many people as possible. If it's not a regional thing, like, if you're up in New York City, but you're a Kansas State fan, well, if it's on Amazon Prime, you're going to be able to watch your team a little bit easier than you might be able to otherwise because of the way that they, map out the regional matchups sometimes. And so I think from that perspective, it potentially opens things up because alumni live all over the place. And so being able to stream your team, I just caught up a catchphrase for you, Amazon Prime, stream your team. Stream your team. There you go.
Team stream.
You can get that one for free. No, we're not doing the Bleacher Report thing.
No, my bad.
So I like it. I think it's an okay idea. I don't like it as a primary rights holder for the Big 12, just in what it does for kind of the non-streaming viewership. But I think if the money's right, that won't matter as much because, again, it's going to allow teams to get more in their pocketbook and allow them to promote in other ways their school, their university, their programming, and their football team.
I'm just doing a little research. The market cap for Amazon is $1.56 trillion. I believe the one for Disney is $375 billion. Just kind of give you an idea. I mean, I know it's like we have to wrap our minds around that, right? I mean, Disney, a juggernaut, and Amazon's got more. I think John brings up a point, Jake, that we've talked about here too, but there is a possibility that CBS, Fox, and NBC, maybe now they've gotten a taste, maybe are more hesitant to build more, right? There's some of them, or one of them might be wanting to build more. One of them might be say, no, we're good. We all saw how much they're paying for that one game a week. They're paying what, $300 million?
$350 million for one
for the second game, the second Big Ten game. They're paying $350 million. That's how badly CBS wanted to get back in the game. Now we'll see if that satisfies them, but that's the point, right, Jake? Find the people who want to get into the game and say, all right, this is kind of, if you want a major player, we are the last show in town. Everybody else is there. If you want to get in on this and see if it's something you want to do. And I think Brett Yormark's doing that, but that's maybe the play here. ESPN's, I think we all agree, ESPN will probably end up being the primary, right?
Yeah, I would assume so. So the one thing I want to point people to is Brett Yormark. I know that he came over from the Nets and working there in New York City, but most people I think are overlooking the fact that he spent time with NASCAR and helped put together a media rights deal when he was with NASCAR. Mm-hmm. We all know that NASCAR has kind of been through different iterations of networks it's been on and that type of stuff. This is a guy who's been through media rights negotiations, and I think he is going to think outside the box on this. So yeah, if Amazon wants to get in the mix, yeah, you entertain that. If TNT, if Turner wants to get in, I want Chuck on a pregame show. I'd love to have Charles Barkley talking in college football every week. I'm all on board with that. So chase as many opportunities as you can find, because you're right. You need to dip into different piles of cash here and grab as much of it as you possibly can, because we all know that the SEC and the Big Ten have got this big lead out there in terms of how much money they're being projected to make. As the Big 12, you need to collect as much of that as you possibly can and get yourself within shouting distance if at all possible.
Last question I have for you guys, and you guys can all answer it. It's a complicated one. We'll try to be semi-brief. Does ESPN try to facilitate a merger between Pac-12 and the Big 12? And a merger, I mean, maybe one of them eating teams. Because do they want, after the loss of the Big 10, do they want more inventory and to say, all right, we'll pay for both, and we don't have to pay a ton for both as the primary for both Pac-12 and for the Big 12? Or is it more advantageous for them to maybe, because here's the thing, let's not get it twisted. The TV companies have facilitated these moves, people. They have. Do you think the Big Ten went to Fox and was like, by the way, we're going to snag them? And they're like, oh, that's great. That's what, no, Fox was definitely involved. You know what Fox also has vested interest in? The Pac-12. You know what they were able to do? They were basically able to kill two birds, one stone. We don't have to pay the Pac-12 rights anymore, and we get the Los Angeles market here all into one. They made that move, right? And they might just take whatever else they want. So I'm telling y'all, they're involved in this. Do we think ESPN could want to some consolidation just so they can pay for one package? Or do we think they want both just for the sake of getting more programming? Because, I think there could be a desire for programming that might ultimately save the Pac-12 here. John or Jake, I'll go to you first because you have a bit more familiarity with the Pac-12 than we do.
My honest opinion is I think you're going to see both of them stay as separate entities. I think ESPN, if they really wanted to press the issue, could push for something like that. But I just think for the sake of currently with linear TV still really ruling the day with regards to sports rights right now, they need as many different properties they can put on their various networks because they've got all the different channels there at ESPN. They've got to fill that inventory up. So I think they're okay with keeping the two separate for the time being. That's my personal opinion.
John.
I still think Brett Yormark's out there shopping. I think he's still trying to make something happen by grabbing some of those Pac-12 teams. He's not sleeping. George Klavkov wants to throw some comments out there about how he's not yet decided whether or not he's going to go shop in the Big 12. Well, Brett Yormark's already decided. He's going shopping in the Pac-12. Now it's just a matter of can he do enough to lure some of those teams over to the Big 12. And I mean, anything is possible at this point in time. Like, there's nothing to me that's off the table as far as conference realignment goes, at least for the next 4 or 5 years. I think we could see a Big 12 that has several Pac-12 teams added to it over the next several years. I don't think there will be a full-on merger because I just don't think that that's in the best interest of the Big 12. And it may not even be in the best interest of the Pac-12, but just taking a few more teams from the Pac-12 to kind of solidify yourself, add a few more markets, especially if you're able to add, the Arizona, Denver, and maybe even the Northwest markets in the Washington and Oregon area. That would be huge for the Big 12. I don't think they're going to just stop at where they're at. I think they're going to continue to look to add more markets.
Steven?
Yeah, I agree with the guys. I think ESPN is going to go the more programming route by having them separated. Yeah. But I feel like ESPN could ultimately, if they wanted to, force the Big 12's hand. I just feel like it would take a lot of pushing because the Big 12, I agree with John. Like, I think Brett Yormark is trying to be aggressive right now, and he's not interested in any sort of merger at the moment.
Well, I think that, to be honest, if the Big 12 wanted more leverage, this is that you got to go now, right? You have to make the move now because I think both are at a disadvantage if they're going separately, right? You're going to have a difficult time to kind of what leverage? I mean, I know the only leverage they have right now is, hey, look, you have the ACC network, you have the SEC network, you have ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, and ABC you have to fill. We can help you do that. That's your leverage point right now. But still, how much leverage is it? Because also the Big 12 does need ESPN in some ways. So I think that if you want to put the heat on ESPN in any way, shape, or form, Brett Yormark probably has to go now and kind of try to make those moves because the Pac-12 obviously is in that negotiating, they're in that space. So, it's funny because fans want this stuff to happen really fast. I actually was talking about this earlier with somebody. And we're seeing it play out in real time very slowly, right? I mean, it's one move 1 month, and then the TV it's USC and UCLA in 1 month. And then it's the Big Ten television contract the next month. And then we'll see the offers from probably the Pac-12 here in the coming weeks and days. And so we all want this to be, let's get it done. Let's go. Let's get the playoff expansion. And it's all going to be this thing that kind of plays out month after month after month after, which is really interesting. So this was one of many dominoes that will fall on this. All right, guys, this is such interesting stuff, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it as the season approaches and then into the season as well. Plug time. Steven, where can people find you and your work and all of its variety?
Yeah, I'm at Simcox Steven on Twitter. The show is at Locked On TCU. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts, and I'm also on YouTube, so subscribe there as well.
John.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. You can follow the show at Locked On Sooners. And yeah, podcasts are everywhere on YouTube, also on Facebook, Locked On Sooners Podcasts.
And Jake.
Yeah, Locked On Cougars for all things BYU, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, etc. You can search out Locked On Cougars, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And then personal Twitter handle, you can find me. I'm at Jacob C. Hatch.
You guys can find me on Twitter at LOBig12 and at Josh Neighbors _ Get the show wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. Also, shout out to the folks from Locked On Baylor. They are going to be listening to this one. They'll have it on their feed as well. So Drake Toll finished up a great season calling baseball in the Cape. Congratulations to him. And our gift to him is this episode. So enjoy that, the Locked On Baylor crowd. All right, guys, talk next week.